So there you go. So I just want to give a big welcome to everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited about this, and we're really excited that we had such a great response, earlier this week or last week, I'm sorry, my days all run together. Last week we had 2 in-person sessions in our offices, and we had over 60 people joining at each session. And now tonight we have close to 180 who have registered for this event. So we're just really excited about all of the interest and engagement that we have with you all. So before I go any further, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kat Harmon. I'm the Senior Director of Communications here at the Horizon Foundation. And some names I recognize and a lot of names that I don't, but that's great. We're really happy to have you here. So I'm going to be taking us through kind of the look and feel of what this evening's going to look like, and I will be your moderator this evening, if you will. So let's get started. So again, welcome this evening, but I also want to do a quick acknowledgement of our board members who are on this call, elected officials and staff of elected officials, any fellows we may have on the call, and grantees. Thank you all so much for being here. So just so everybody's aware, we're going to share, this is our last community conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to share the PowerPoint after this, not directly after this, sometime this week. And we'll also be posting the recording on our YouTube channel. And we'll link it from our webpage. So feel free to share it with any and everyone that you like. So there's a few housekeeping items and other miscellaneous items that I want to mention. So we're going to be having a Q&A at the end. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please put it in the chat. We also will be collecting questions to put into a Q&A form so that we can also share that along with the PowerPoint, just so that we can make sure that we get all of your questions answered. Now, I preface that by saying tonight we may not be able to get to all of your questions, but please feel free to send it to us. We want to make sure we answer everything that we can. So for our first, I would really like to let everybody know that we have a new team member that joined us last month. Her name is Christina Gray Akpa. She's our new senior program officer. She is fantastic. So she's a new face in the office. She'll be a new face in the community. So if you see her, I have no doubt you'll give her a warm welcome, just like we have. But welcome, Christina. So I'll walk you through today's agenda. So quickly, it's a review of and reflect on the journey that we've taken. We're going to have an overview of the strategic planning process. We're going to preview what the road ahead looks like, and then we're going to discuss how we can continue to work together side by side, and we will conclude with our Q&A portion. Before we move forward, I want to take a moment and just let everybody read our land acknowledgement as we honor the ancestral lands of the Piscataway and the Susquehannock tribes that were here before us. So because we are virtual, we wanted to take just a moment to give you a chance to scan this QR code to sign up for our newsletter so we can keep in touch, so that you can be informed about what we're doing, because we really want to continue to work together to co-create and to make Howard County, to like have people in Howard County living abundant, healthy lives. So I encourage you, I will give you more than 30 seconds to scan the QR code and to subscribe to our newsletter. And if you aren't able to do it right now, it's okay, because I will also give you time toward the end. Okay. While we'll be delivering this presentation in English today, we do realize that we have some non-English speaking friends and neighbors in our community. So if you go to our brand new website, you'll see that our strategic plan summary will be available for non-English speakers. So speaking of our website, I do want to let you know that as we have gone through this new strategic planning process, we've also gone through a little bit of a brand refresh. So in the chat, you'll see a link to our new website. I encourage you to visit it. And, you know, as an organization, we're 26 years old, we've matured, and we really felt like this was a natural time to go through a bit of a brand refresh. We have newer, deeper, bolder colors, if you will. We updated our logos. Even, you know, when you come and visit us in our office, you'll notice even around the office, we have updated our pictures along the walls and in both the conference room and in the front lobby when you walk in. We really wanted to reflect who we are and what we want to move forward into. So again, I encourage you to check out our new website. And again, the link is in the chat. So in order to know where we're headed, we must first understand where we've been. So I'm gonna start us off and talk about the journey we've taken. So we're gonna explore our most recent strategic plan, and then I'm going to pass it off to Glenn once I'm done, and he can tell you a little bit about the process that we embarked on for this new strategic plan. All right, so a little bit about our history. The foundation was formed when Hopkins merged with Howard County General, and the assets from that sale stayed in the community, and from that, the Horizon Foundation was born. And we've been living off that ever since. So we get a lot of questions, kind of where we get our funding from. That's where. So we don't do any fundraising, nor are we funded by the government. So I hope that gives you a little bit of clarification. And just as a quick snapshot, we've provided over $7 million in funding the community and also supported well over 300 initiatives since 1998. How do we do our work? So the simple way is pretty much captured in this little slide. So how do we move the needle? How do we get our work done? So they're the 4 Ps, right? Policy is kind of like where we live. That's where the sustainable, systemic, true change happens. We can't do it without partners and grantees and other important institutional partners. And then we build power, we share power, so that the policy changes can happen. And then the proof is in the data, the proof is in the work, the proof is in the numbers. So quite simply put, 4 Ps: policy, partners, power, and proof. So this should look familiar to some of you. This is just some of our past and present, some of our present work that we have going on. And if you at any point, were involved in any of these initiatives or programs or projects, just a huge, huge thank you to all of you for look at all this work, beautiful work that we've been able to get done together, and the things that we've co-created together so that we can make Howard County a better place for everybody. So while we have so much to celebrate and so many accomplishments that we've had together, I just want to give you a few examples from each of our priority areas from the last strategic plan, just at a high level. So first you'll notice that Complete Streets was big for us, over $30 million in Complete Streets work, 40 plus miles of bike paths, shared roads, and all those kinds of things. And I love this picture. My husband works over in Oakland Mills, so I get to see this quite often. So it's a beautiful thing to see. Next is our expansion of the mental health counseling in partnership with the Howard County Public School System to extend counseling to all students in Howard County. I think at its inception, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was just in a handful of schools, I think 5 schools. And as of right now, really, really proud to say that it is in all 77 schools across the county. So right now, it's over 1,500 students who are receiving those individualized counseling services. And then just the last one that I'll touch on is Howard County Unsweetened. Super excited. You can see here in the infographic that look at the numbers, almost 30% drop in soda sales, 33% drop in fruit juice sales, and actually an increase in water sales. So that's pretty incredible. So next we'll talk about healthy aging. So we have our Speak Easy Howard program, which increased particularly, not just overall, but really particularly among the Hispanic and Black community, from the jump 10% in the Black community, but also look at the jump from in the Hispanic community. It's a really hard community to reach sometimes. So to have that kind of increase really speaks volumes to the work that we've done together. And lastly, for healthy aging, it's you may remember it as GBRICS, but it got a new name. It's the Central Maryland Regional Crisis Center. It was a $45 million grant to the state. So this was a regional partnership that we had with other counties within Central Maryland to really bring these crisis services to better better aid those who are experiencing a mental health challenge, as opposed to sending out police who, where it's not necessary. We're trying to equip a mobile crisis team to be able to care for people experiencing a mental health challenge. So you'll see that key partners include 17 hospitals, 4 local behavioral health authorities in counties across Central Maryland. So equity is steeped in and centered in everything that we do, but we also had a separate priority area for that. So we've done a lot of work in the equity space, and it's not just us. It's our equity. We started our first racial equity collaborative cohort, and they had a big win. Just an example here, they advocated for policy 1080, which really was to address the educational inequities in the Howard County Public School System. Aside from that, we supported the minimum wage, here in Howard County. We also, for maternal and infant health, we, were successful in getting funding for prenatal and wraparound supports. And then most recently, before 2023 ended, we were really excited about the win that Bridges to Housing Stability and Columbia Housing Center. They won some key affordable housing amendments for the HOCO by Design Master Plan. So we're really excited about that. So again, this is a co-creation between us at the Horizon Foundation and you as our community. So we're really hoping that you see yourselves in this work and bringing you all in, the community in, and our partners and our grantees and everyone in at the beginning as opposed to the middle or the end was really important to us in the process, in the work. And so I will now pass it along to Glenn so he can tell you a little bit more about that process.
Thank you, Kat. Hello, everybody. So great to see you. I am excited to talk to you about the next part of the journey that we took with our strategic plan. But before I did, I just wanted to mention how excited I was looking through all the participants today, seeing old friends, old colleagues, and new friends and new colleagues, I thought it'd be a great idea if you took a little bit of time, help us out. Could you go ahead and put in the chat your name, your organization, maybe even your email, and tell us if you've been a partner with us before. We are very excited to continue doing this work with you and thought it would be a great idea to go ahead and get that in the list. So go ahead and do that if you can. I'll take 2 seconds and then I'll hop right in. Oh, yes, I see you all. I see you. I wish we were in person. This is very exciting to have such a big crowd. Sadly, it's all virtual, but it is great to see you all even virtually. So go ahead, next slide for me, Kat, as you continue to do that. So as we really thought about our strategic plan, one of the things we thought we'd do is do it a little bit differently and really try to honor the kind of organization that we want to be and honor the past as well. So you'll see in our strategic plan priorities, we had some things that we centered in this strategic plan. And this is my 13th year at the foundation. I will have you know that I have seen 3 strategic plans, and I am so most proud of this strategic plan because of how we did this work. So first of all, we wanted to reflect the foundation, both where we were and where we're going. Capture our North Stars, how we approach the work. Everything should be kind of recognizing the changes that we're talking about here today. Secondly, we wanted to center community voice. Typically, we talk about people who are hard to reach, but as we started talking to people, we realized that we hardly ever asked them. And that is a major thing for us. We wanted to make sure that we heard people and we understood the challenges that they were facing living here in Howard County. So that was a key secondary part of our priorities. Third priority was to co-create with you. We knew that this was the start of something big, not the finishing of something big. So we wanted to make sure that we centered equity and made inclusion and belonging a part of the work that we did. And then lastly, we wanted to thoughtfully commit to the work that we had heard, to all the input that we got, and make sure that our decisions were based on that new learning. Next slide. Next slide. Everyone who's ever worked on a strategic plan before has done quantitative data, the kind of statistics that you get. We did that too, of course. I had a pastor friend of mine who always said, you know, Glenn, statistics are the dried tears of people in pain. That's exactly what we see a lot of times in our statistics. We see what has happened after the fact. And we wanted to understand that from the data side for sure, but we wanted to go a bit further. Next slide. And so we dove into lived experience. What does that exactly mean? Well, yes, typically in any strategic plan for us, we've done interviews in the community and we've talked to our grantees, our institutional partners. And we made sure that we did a lot of those because we wanted to understand what you thought. But as I said before, we wanted to lean in even more and really talk to people that we hardly ever asked for their opinion and what they were going through. So we intentionally made sure that we did that. We did, for example, a representative poll of 400 people of color and those who also made below $75,000 in our community. 2 populations who've hardly ever been asked in our community about what they thought and what they were feeling and what they were facing in our community. It would be as if we went and knocked on everybody's door and the answers that we got would only likely vary by about 5%. Pretty a big thing. Secondly, we also made sure that we were speaking to populations that we rarely, ever asked the questions of, and we went and talked to the Spanish-speaking community in Spanish to understand what they were facing as well. Thirdly, we did a summit. A lot of you were there. If I was going to see you now, I'd say, raise your hand and tell me if you were there. I will tell you, we had a great summit. We had Soledad O'Brien there, and we did live polling during that time period to understand what your priorities were. And lastly, we knocked on 1,700 doors. Now you might say 1,700 doors is one thing. The reality is it's 1,700 doors that opened up. We were actually knocking on far, far, far greater to be able to get 1,700 people to open up their door to talk to us. And boy, did they talk to us. We had at least a half an hour typically at every door, at least 20 minutes, where people were very willing to talk about what they were facing. And I should mention that both the polling and the door knocking was done by firms of color, led by and owned by people of color. And we did make sure to reimburse folks who are at the door for giving us of their time and their lived experience at that time. Next slide. So that means we got a lot of data. In addition to the statistics, which are one thing, we actually heard from people themselves about what they were facing. And you will notice in each of these categories, there are some similar themes that went across the line, and you will notice, hopefully, that those come up later on. Everything from the things that we are traditionally doing in our foundation and the work with all of you, mental health, the typical type of accessible care options, those sort of things, healthcare, we're used to doing that at the foundation. And of course, we heard those sort of things. But we also heard some new things, housing, food access, things like that, transportation. We heard that across the board. And lastly, of course, we heard systemic racism, discrimination, always coming up as being very important as well. Next slide. And yes, don't forget, you're all going to get copies of this so that you can take a little bit deeper look at it. So a little bit further, we heard pretty much all across the board, the number one biggest challenge that people were facing is the affordability to live in our county and the accessibility of the kind of care and overall life that they would love to have. And we heard that's true of mental and behavioral health, accessible care options, healthcare coverage, but it's not just having access to it. It's about having access to providers who respect you, to providers who will give you the treatment that you feel you deserve. We heard from a lot of people who said, I just don't know if I trust my healthcare provider. Or others who said, I can't access it because healthcare is too expensive and it's too impersonal and I need someone to interpret over the phone. We heard this time and time again. Next slide. But we also heard that when it comes to your normal daily needs, housing, as I said, came up, and we had expected that we might hear housing in our community. We didn't expect, however, that we would hear as much as we did about housing quality. So it's not just, can I afford my house? It's if I am in a house currently, why do I still have pests? Why do I have appliances that don't work? Why can't I get a hold of my landlord? All of those sort of things came up to the top. We also heard, again, affordability is a real big problem. That if I only have so much money to live, I need to figure out where I can put it. If I spend all my money in housing, I might not have enough money for food. If I have enough money for food, maybe I don't have enough money to access transportation. We heard a lot of those sort of things. You have to have 2 jobs, 2 minimum wage jobs to live here in the county. And you'll see from that. Next slide. Systemic barriers. I told you racism came up time and time again. I think the quote that was most impactful to us is the one right in the center of the page. Howard County is the most sophisticated racist place I've ever seen. And that's because oftentimes people felt like you couldn't understand the intention of the person, whether it was perhaps a coded message to you or not. But we heard that time and time again. I feel like I'm getting different treatment than my white friends would get. And I feel like that's a problem. Next slide. And lastly, I will tell you that we decided to make decisions completely differently. In other strategic plans, our Planning and Evaluation Committee does the work of deciding what the foundation does. It is made up of trustees, and that is typically how we've done the work. But we wanted to lean in to really honoring that community voice. So this time we had 8 trustees and 8 community members with lived experience who were all a part of this strategic planning process. The folks who actually made the decisions in the room learned how to norm, perform, and storm, and at the end of the day, created a plan that you're about to hear about. But we also made sure that we weren't extracting information from people, that we were paying them for doing the work. So we compensated all of our community members who were on this committee to make sure that we were honoring their lived experience and what they could go ahead and provide during the course of this year-long process, as you see up top. So with that, I am going to pause and hand it over to Nikki so that you can hear more about the plan. I hope you are excited as we are about the road ahead.
Thanks, Glenn. Good evening. I'm Nikki Highsmith-Bernick, and I am President and CEO of the Horizon Foundation. And I'm so happy to be joining you this evening, and I'm really glad that you guys are sticking with us. So thank you. Next slide. As we launch our new strategic plan, I am so excited to tell you that after 26 years, we have decided to change our vision and mission to better reflect where we want to go in our organization and as a community. Our vision is that Howard County is free from systemic inequities, where all people can live abundant and healthy lives. In creating this new vision statement, there's a recognition that systemic inequities exist in Howard County, that not everyone has the same opportunity to live a healthy and abundant life, but that we envision a future state where all people can live side by side in healthy and abundant lives. Our mission is to work side by side with community to build power, advocate for policy change, and dismantle structural racism to achieve better health for everyone in Howard County and Greater Maryland. With this new vision statement, we commit to promising to continue to work on policy and long-term systemic change, to work side by side with you as a big community, and an acknowledgement that structural racism is at the root of inequity and health inequity in Howard County. We also recognize, right, that Howard County can't always do this alone. Sometimes we need regional and state partners and regional and state policy change. And so we recognize that we have partners at the local, regional, and state level. Next slide. Okay, so we have new values as well after all these years. And I'm really excited to share these values today with you with a dose of humility. These are values that will help us as an organization grow and develop. It will help us make decisions that better align with our beliefs. And most importantly, we share them with you so that you can hold us accountable for how we want to behave in the future. We know we're not there yet as an organization, but these are things that we aspire to be over time. The first is to be impactful, to act with intentionality and draw upon lived experience, research, and data to drive positive health outcomes in our community. Normally, they would tell you not to read every word on the slide, but I'm going to read every word on this slide because it's so important to us. The second is to be trustworthy. We work to earn your trust by building relationships through sincerity and vulnerability. Anti-racist. We challenge and transform policies, behaviors, and beliefs that perpetuate systemic racism and other intersecting forms of oppression. Courageous. We acknowledge and use our privilege to influence others, to dispel harmful narratives, and to demand change. And finally, catalytic. We build and share power to foster coalitions that advance health equity. Exciting. Next slide. So now I'm going to transition us into the focus areas that we intend to invest in over the next 5 years of our strategic plan. These three focus areas are based on all the data that we received that Glenn highlighted earlier. And these are three broad categories of work. A few things about these categories. One is we've depicted them as a circle. We recognize that these issues are interrelated and that each area intersects with the other one. And we can't necessarily silo ourselves or you into separate buckets. And so in the future, as you begin to work with us, if you're working in multiple areas, that's really exciting for us because we know that these are all interconnected issues. I'm going to start on the upper left with the orange and talk about the one that's maybe the most comfortable for us, the one that we've worked on the most in the past. And that is to demand a compassionate and equitable healthcare system. As Glenn mentioned, we heard over and over again in our surveys and in our conversations with community residents that they felt unheard, that they felt that they were getting different treatment and different outcomes if they were community members of color. And we seek to change that. We'd like to start with recognizing that Black women in Howard County have higher proportion of babies born with low birth weight and have a higher proportion of preterm births. We also recognize that many of our Hispanic moms have had lack of access to prenatal care, and that impacts both their outcomes and their infant outcomes. And we want all this to change. We want all of this to change for moms, for birthing people, and that all children can be born in Howard County with a healthy start to a long life. So we promise to work in this area side by side with you to ensure the health of birthing people and their children. The second is to increase access to compassionate and equitable health and mental health care. And I'll talk about mental health care for a moment. Kat mentioned earlier that we've done a lot of programming in this area, grant making related to mental health in the school system and mental health, particularly related to crisis services. We're interested in ensuring our mental health care system and mental health in particular is not criminalized, that we're supporting folks with mental illness and not criminalizing mental illness. We want to ensure that mental health care is supported by providing it in the community, and that we're supporting mental health care by building providers that are more diverse, understanding that distrust in the mental health system has a long history related to it, and that are seeking to be more compassionate and respectful moving forward. So these first two areas, mental health and maternal and infant health, we've identified already. And then we look to work with you to uncover other ways that we can dismantle structural racism in the healthcare system, because we know it shows up in many, many other forms in many, many other ways. Next slide. So this slide is going to be a new one for us. We are, I think, recognizing and putting into our strategic plan what we call, because health is at the center of our world, right? So we call these the social determinants of health. These are non-medical factors that influence health outcomes and are really important. And frankly, from the community interviews that we did, they were often cited by our residents as the biggest barrier to living abundant and healthy lives. So first, we promise to remove barriers to obtaining and sustaining affordable, high-quality rental housing and home ownership. A couple of things here that I'll note. One, as Glenn mentioned in the surveys and in the data that we found, not only do we have an affordability issue, but we have a quality issue. Many people reflected on the fact that they had mice, they had mold, they had appliances that didn't work, they had leaky toilets or leaky roof. And they were so afraid to bring these issues to the attention of their landlord because they were afraid that they would be evicted. And so not only do we need affordable housing for all of our residents, but we also need the quality of housing that we would all like to live in. And we also know home ownership is important. It's important in terms of having a safe, healthy, stable place to live. And also, as we'll talk about, it does lead to wealth attainment and intergenerational wealth attainment over time. The second area that we promise to work in is to ensure food and nutritional security by increasing access to affordable, healthy foods and drinks. We've been working in this area for some time, but I think we'll do this with a little twist and looking at nutrition more broadly. And both of these issues, both housing and food and nutritional security, were really important to our older adult populations. And so I just want to underscore that as well. And then finally, excuse me, I'm still fighting a cold. A brand new area for us is around wealth attainment. And we are looking to build long-term generational wealth in communities of color to close the racial disparity gap in wealth attainment. And I'm going to pause for just a minute. This last area is really, really important as we strive to ensure that Black, Hispanic, and Asian families have the same level of wealth in our community as white families do. And at this point, I'm going to turn it to Glenn. Hi, Glenn. Are you good to go on the next slide?
Sorry about that. Next slide. Yep,
Next slide.
sorry about that. And lastly, we just wanted to go ahead and talk about our third issue area there, which is dismantling structural racism and community building. So the big thing that we've always thought about is, as we do this work in these other two areas, how do we bring the community along? And you will notice that we have pledged to form long and close trusting relationships with all of you as our grantees. We hope to fund community organizations that want to connect and advocate for policy change. We want to link grantees through communities of practice to learn and exchange ideas. We want to build power. We want to build power for narrative change in our community, where the narrative needs to change from things are okay here to things can be better here, and to really create the advocacy atmosphere so that we can make change together. And we've already done that a whole lot so far, but with you all and continued work together, we can really make some change happen. Next slide. So the way we like to talk about this, a lot of folks, whenever we talk about equity, are thinking about equality or things like that, but we like to talk about the curb cut effect. How many of you remember when the Disabilities Act required that we cut the curbs in order to allow for people who are in wheelchairs or differently able to be able to move around the community? And if you do remember that, people always thought like, wow, we are actually making space for people to be able to go ahead and be able to use their wheelchair. But what we didn't realize is that we were also making it easier for moms and babies and dads and babies and strollers to be able to get where they're going. We made it easier for bikers and walkers to be able to cross the street and do so safely. This is the idea that when we work on equity, we work on improving things for everybody while centering the folks who need the impact the most. Next slide. And lastly, we want to talk about shrinking the change. Actually, go to the next slide too, because I really think it really does. So, you know, we've all been in that situation. I'm the laundry guy at my house, and I have shrunk things before, but this is a good shrinking. We want to shrink the change in this case, because when we talk about things like housing, or we talk about food insecurity, nutrition security, those sort of things, they seem rather big. And when we talk about shrinking the change, it means that we're going to work together. We're going to use that overused word, but we're going to use it in the right way. We're going to co-create with you. We want to figure out what that change means. So we're going to do our best, whereas not everybody in the world will be able to be funded by the work that we do. But we all want to work together with all of you to make sure that the changes that we're approaching are sequential and that they build on each other, so that at the end of the day, we're going to make change. While it might have been shrunk here, change really happened. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kenitra.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, hello, everyone. I am Kenitra Fuqua, Program Director with the Foundation, and I am so delighted and honored to just be here with you today. It was so nice to see so many familiar faces in the chat and so many new ones as well. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about our grant making. And, you know, you've heard from all of my colleagues just how we've gone on a very intentional journey around our strategic plan, and really thought about how we can work together and really center the community that are really having these health challenges the most. And that really has been reflected in our grant making as well. So as we looked at our grant making, we realized that we had to look internally and think about how we could really imagine our grant making practices to really be more inclusive and trust centered. So as we go through some of our grant making changes, you'll really see how we're trying to center trust in all of the work that we do. And also thinking about some of our grant making, we wanted to be transparent and really be able to acknowledge the inherent power dynamics within grant making. And we really wanted to challenge and be able to change those. We want to focus on building more collaborative relationships with our grantees, knowing that this really allows for more innovation, allows for greater risk taking, helps us to be able to learn and grow together, and ultimately think about, you know, how are we going to produce some of those equitable and impactful results. So next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit just about some high-level changes to our grant-making practice. Really wanting to invest time upfront in that discovery phase. So we want to work with our grantees, think about how we can co-create together, how we can be able to strengthen relationships and really align our work and identify joint commitments together. So I know you have heard co-creation from some of my colleagues, and you'll hear it from me a lot, but really thinking about how we do our work together and really center the community. We also want to be able to provide opportunities for longer term unrestricted grant dollars. We know when we give you more flexibility with grant funding, you're able to do more things. This allows you to be more innovative to your work, allows you to think about how you use those funds for more emergent actions and sustainability as well. So I know before we might have funded just around a project, but we're really thinking about, how do we go bigger than that and really be able for you to be able to use that grant funding in a more flexible way. Hopefully this next line makes you a little bit more happier. We're really thinking on how we can make our grant applications more accessible. We know that grant writing is a strength to some and it is a headache to others. So we really want to be able to help you within that and be able to provide different mechanisms for you to apply for our grants and be also able to provide additional support from our staff and when applying for grants as well. Also, the same goes with reporting. We know that reporting is definitely necessary, and we're looking to see how we can simplify and streamline our grant reporting to focus not just on the written information, but really focus on dialogue and learning and be able to have that mutual accountability to each other. And lastly, thinking about, how can we use the power of social media and videos and storytelling to really be able to capture the journey that we're going on within our grantee family and just really be able to show the impact of our work. Next slide, please. So I also want to just highlight some different engagement opportunities. So some of these might be new to you and some of you might be participating in some of these already. So our first Thursday community conversations, these really stem and was brought out of our community summit. So we heard from participants that they were really just looking for opportunities to better connect with one another, to really just be able to talk about some of the challenges here in Howard County and just talk about potential solutions. So every first Thursday of the month in our office, we invite you to come and do just that. So we have some colleagues that, serve as the not even the facilitators, because I would say that you guys are the facilitators. You come, you set your agenda, you set what you want to talk about, and we really just serve as the convener and invite you in to have those conversations with us. We also, something new that we'll be doing to really be able to focus more on our focus areas, we'll be holding 2 focus area open houses, and I'll talk a little bit about that in our next slide. But here today, we're just giving you a very high level of how we'll work together and what our focus areas are and some of the ideas we have. But when we have our open houses, we really want to hear from you. So we want to have that opportunity to go deeper in some of our focus areas so you can hear what we've learned and we can hear, what this looks like for you and how you have, for you to be able to share your experiences with things as well. We also always invite you to our coalitions. We have 2 active coalitions right now, Mental Health Matters and Healthier Choices, and those 2 coalitions will continue. So we invite you to continue to join those coalitions, and thank you to so many that are on this call today that are active members of our coalitions as well. I think earlier Kat mentioned that we had a new website, so please check that out. But also on our new website, we have some opportunities to engage with us as vendors. So we know that there's incredible talent right here in Howard County, and we love the opportunity to learn more about the different skills and skill sets that you offer to the community. So there is a form that you can complete to share that information with us. And then lastly, I will say that on behalf of all of our staff, we welcome the opportunity to connect with any and everyone. So although I might oversee our grants, we have so many more staff members that would be more than delighted to talk about you and your organization and your interest as well. So now I'm just going to go through very high level of what our new grant making and engagement process kind of looks like. So don't forget, you will get these slides afterwards. So, and we'll make sure we share that information with you. So I spoke a little bit about our focus area open houses. Those will happen between May and June of this year. And really, again, these are just opportunities to learn more about our focus areas, but really for you to be able to share your interests and share your experiences when that focus areas. So I know Nikki said it, like for example, like housing is very new for the foundation. We are not the experts. We know that there has been incredible work done in housing. So we want to learn from you, and we want to know how we can continue to work with you to help to move some of these issues forward. So we plan to release a RFP, a really big RFP, in September of fall of this year. And again, really thinking about how we're providing those different ways for you to apply. But really at the heart of this is thinking about how we can help foster and closer trusting relationships with you and our potential grantees. And then in December is when we would release award funding. So again, we are trying to partner with and fund with community organizations committed to solving community health challenges. I will say, as you're going through this RFP process, it might look different in terms of just the type of questions that we're asking on our application. So right now we're not really concerned with the what of what we're going to do. We really want to know like how excited and how passionate, and what are your ideas and how we might work together. So I just wanted to call out that just even the type of questions that we might ask in a grant application might look different, because we really just want to know, how committed and engaged and passionate are you about these issues. But all of this will culminate into our new grantee experience. So the grant work, or the real work, shall I say, will begin to happen in January of 2025. And this is where we really plan to link grantees through a community of practice to learn and exchange ideas. As a foundation, we'll offer technical assistance in areas uplifted by our grantees, but really want to think about, how we're able to co-create our work together and be able to just think about some, good solutions to some of these hard problems. And throughout all of this that we're doing, we will have ongoing engagement activities. So our focus area, open houses is one, but we'll continue our First Thursday conversations. We have our coalition meetings, we have new vendor relationships. And as I said earlier, you can connect with the Horizon Foundation staff at any time. So I just wanted to go a little bit deeper in some of our in our new grantee experience. So this is where I said that, this is where the magic is going to happen, where we'll co-create solutions together to complex community issues, really thinking about how we connect our grantees and go on a collaborative learning journey. Think about, what does racial equity mean in our work? What does it mean in your organization? How are we advancing anti-racism? And thinking about, what are the coaching and activities that we can do to support that? Additionally, how can we do the same with community organizing? So we know at the foundation, we really prioritize working on changing policies and systems. And that's a unique skill set. So we want to be able to provide that skill set to you and come along together and work on these issues together. Also, like I mentioned earlier, just to be able to have technical assistance in areas uplifted by you or our grantees, and really thinking about how, again, we're capturing our grantees' journey using that storytelling and videos and other things. So now I just want to thank you for hanging in there with us. We're not done yet. I'm going to pass it back over to Kat, who will lead us through our question and answer session.
Hi, Kenitra. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we have come to the portion of this presentation where we want to do a bit of Q&A, but before we do that, I just wanted to bring up again, if you didn't have a chance earlier, if you joined late, that's okay. But if you have the opportunity, take out your phone, scan the QR code, and please, sign up or subscribe to our newsletter so that we can stay connected and you can stay updated on all the great things that we're working on. Also, now would be the time if you have a question. Stephanie put in the chat. Thank you, Stephanie. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And so that way I will be moderating it, so I'll be asking it. But again, if we don't get to your question, don't worry. We're going to be collecting these questions, compiling an FAQ or FAQs, and we'll be sharing it along with the presentation later this week for everybody. So before we move into that, I would really love to get some feedback from you in real time. So we've given you a whole lot of information, right? I talked you through where we've been. Glenn talked you through our process for the strategic plan and our new strategic direction. Nikki had talked to you about the high level, but a few details about some of the issue areas we're going to delve into. And then Kenitra was able to walk us through what our grant making principles and the new grantee experience was going to be. So I have a poll that I would like to share with you all. And it's multiple choice, so you don't have to choose just one, but it's really, what are you most interested in working on with us together? So I'll give you a few moments, and if you need to, when it comes up on your screen, that little box to enlarge it, there's only one question, but if you need to, you can enlarge the question. So I'm gonna give you a minute or so to complete that, and then I'll share a few of the results. And yes, you can pick more than one. It's multiple choice. So wherever your interests lie, feel free to choose more than one. We have a lot of answers rolling in. I'm gonna give you guys another minute. Well, minute-ish. All right. So I'm gonna close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So just to share some of the results just in real time, it looks like the top 3 right now, which are pretty close, mental health, high quality housing, and advocacy are our top 3. And then closely followed by food and nutrition security, power building, healthcare and coverage. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for sharing sharing your insights with us. We're just really curious to know where your interests lie. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to stop sharing now and put us in gallery view so you can stop seeing us, our little tiny talking heads. And I am going to put us into gallery view. Okay, so give me a moment just so I can see some of these questions coming in. Okay. So I have one for Glenn. Okay, so Glenn, where do older adults show up in your plan?
Kat, thank you. You probably look at these at the plan that we put out there and you say, I don't see it specifically mentioned. But it is interesting when you look at the poll that we did and we hear from all the people that we knocked doors on and all the rest. We heard a lot of these concerns, particularly coming up in the senior crowd. Housing was the #1 concern that we heard most often, and it most often had to do with both housing quality as well as affordability in there. So that was 2 key things, along with affordability of medical bills. Undoubtedly, the older that you get, you're facing more and more of those medical bills. And then secondly, you see it in food insecurity or nutrition security, depending on how you flip that. Again, not having necessarily access to healthier food. And then if I do have access, I can't afford it. So those sort of things go together. I think, as Nikki said, if you look at this as a circle, all things are interrelated. The other thing I'd say that we heard it on was mental health. social isolation. I feel like I need to be connected more to my neighbors and my friends, and that's affecting my mental health status. So we heard it all across the board for seniors about how this plan is really impacting them and how hopefully together we'll solve some of those problems.
Thanks, Glenn. The next question that I have is for Kenitra. Kenitra, can you tell me more about the new grantee experience and what this will mean if I'm a grantee?
Yes, I can. I can do that, Kayak. Thank you. That's actually one of the most excited parts I am about. I'm excited about our grant making. I think we really want you as a grantee to experience grant making differently. We know the trauma that has come with some grant making, and we don't want that. We don't want that to be here at the foundation. So when we think about the grantee experience, it's really in a way to better serve your organization. So not only are you getting unrestricted grant dollars, and some of the grant funding is now longer term funding, so it could be 1 year or 1 to 3 years, but you're getting also, I consider it kind of like a value add to the to the funds that you're receiving. So you're receiving, support from the foundation. You're receiving additional technical assistance. You're receiving additional trainings and support that will allow you to better connect with the community that you serve, and also be able to better connect with the other grantees that you are working alongside of. So it's really a way to be able to co-create together and create those spaces for collaborations with other organizations and create a deeper connection with them. So you'll be able to receive the money and use the money how it's best fit for your organization, but also have just a lot of different opportunities to connect better with the staff and the grantees that are selected as well. Thank you, Cap.
Thanks, Kenitra. Okay, next question, Nikki. There are many other organizations working in and on your new focus areas. How do you plan on engaging with them?
So a couple ways. Again, sorry, I'm fighting a cold tonight. First of all, we want to come to you. So please invite us to come talk to you, to come talk to your board, to come talk to your staff. We want to hear what you're doing and how you think we could accelerate and amplify the work that you're already doing. The second, as Kenitra mentioned, we have open houses by issue areas that we will host in May or June. And that will be another opportunity to come in and talk with us about ways that we can co-create together and ways that we can continue, again, to support and amplify each other's work. We recognize, particularly in housing and food insecurity, there's lots of nonprofits, there's lots of churches, there's lots of community groups already doing work in this area. We don't want to compete with that work. We want to, again, accelerate our work together. And I'm sure that you have ideas for ways that we can support you in doing that. A couple things that I'll note in there. One is, we are looking at ways that we can create sort of policy and systems changes. So for many of our direct service providers, we would love for you to think about if you can eliminate some of the barriers that exist at a policy level for your clients, what would those be? And how can you come in and talk to us about what some of those barriers would be? The second is those of you who've worked with us for a long time, we worked in the area of chronic disease management for about a decade. And we worked in Speakeasy, right, for almost a decade. When we get into issues, we get into them for the long term. We know these are hard problems that we're seeking to solve as a community. So be patient as we learn, as you learn, as we do this together, as we do this long work together. And as Kenitra said, some of our grant making will be multi-year grant making because we recognize it's really hard to do some of this transformative change on a year-to-year basis. And so look for, again, longer-term grants, systemic grant making in ways that you can hold us accountable for being in this over the long term as well.
Thanks, Nikki. Okay, next question. You guys are asking some really good questions, so thank you. Glenn, can you explain further what you mean by power building? Is it just another term for collaborating with other organizations to achieve outcomes?
That's a great question. I look at power building as going beyond collaboration. We can collaborate on a lot of things and we might make some progress. I look at power building as us together working to move things that were really hard or a big barrier for us to move in the community. Typically things that prevented us from changing a system or a law or a policy or a budget to be able to get things done. So how do we create the opportunity for our organizations to together with others push to get the things done that we need to get done in the community? That's the power building side of it. Collaboration's a part of it, but it's not by itself sufficient.
Thank you. Okay, Kenitra, I have a question for you next.
Hey, Kat, can I elaborate on Glenn's
Yes.
answer?
Yes.
We often hear from our minority communities of color, that they feel unheard, particularly unheard in circles of influence or unheard in terms of places of power. And so part of the power building is to put more seats at the table, so that more people feel included in the policymaking process. We have an incredibly diverse community in Howard County. We recognize that, and we want particularly our communities of color, our Black, Hispanic, and Asian American communities to feel that they are part of the process for creating change and creating political change within the county. And I don't mean politics in terms of big P, I mean politics in terms of little p. What are the types of laws, systems that you would like to change that enable you and your community to live a more abundant, healthy life here in Howard County?
Great, thank you, Nikki. Okay, Kenitra, I have a question for you. Will grantees fall within specific focus areas?
So I'll say yes and no. Yes, you will apply for funding under our different focus areas, but I think as Nikki illustrated that a lot of these focus areas go hand in hand. So I would say, you could be funded under one focus area and still be working on maybe another focus area. I'll also say that this is a journey for our grant making as well. And although it looks very pretty on our slides that we showed, we're still figuring out a lot of things. And a lot of this will be done in co-creation with you as our grantees and as potential grantees. But to answer your question, yes, there will be opportunities to work under a focus area, but knowing that you could be working on several things because some of these things just, go across and go around that circle.
Thank you, Kenitra. I have another one for you, Glenn. I hear that you included African American and Hispanics in surveys. However, there are minorities in Howard County as well, such as I am a Southeast Asian, and we have a huge number of population here. Language barriers are very important.
Yes, I would totally agree with you. And let's say two things. One, by all means, our data collection was not perfect. We have ways to go to be able to make sure that we can be fully inclusive in this county because of the diversity of the people that live here, and that's fantastic. Secondly, I would say that our strategic plan is a living document. As we continue to reach out to people, we are going to continue to learn more. So what I would say is, it is true. We actually focus mostly on Black and Brown and the Asian community to make sure that we were making at least the greatest attempts that we could, given the numbers of population and the data tools that we were using. So for example, if you are looking at reaching a smaller number of folks in the community, say below 3 or 4 or even 7%, it becomes much harder to use polling to be able to get to folks. So we did try to do door knocking in communities that were very diverse to try to get the most number of responses possible, but you're right. We certainly did not get as many responses as we could because there were language barriers in some areas of the community. You're right. But let's keep working together. I think that that's a big thing. Come in and talk to us. Let's figure out how we can do even better job moving forward.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay. Okay, so I think maybe Nikki, this one might be for you. How will you ensure inclusion for people with disabilities and address the inequities they face in our community, particularly for accessible housing?
So great question. I think there's a couple ways I would answer that. It's really important in this strategic plan that we center racial equity. We know based on all of the data that we've looked at across health outcomes and other outcomes related to health, like wealth and housing, that we have big gaps in our community based on race. That said, like the circle that we have about our focus areas, we know that the intersectionality of people that feel oppressed and marginalized is really important in this community, and for us all to feel included, to feel like we are included. So I would say if you work in communities that typically may feel othered, whether that's based on ability or based on gender or sexuality or other ways of othering, I would say come talk to us, and come talk to us with the lens of what is it like for maybe your residents, your clients that are people of color and people with a disability, what that intersectionality looks like and how hard that is for them in this community. Those are really important conversations to have and to ensure the inclusivity, but also kind of honoring the intersectionality of those issues, but also centering race in those conversations. So that's a kind of complicated answer to the fact that we recognize there are many forms of marginalization and discrimination in the community. We talk a lot, Kenitra will say often in our racial equity collaborative that this is not the oppression Olympics. Like we don't want to fight to see who is more oppressed than the other, but we do want to recognize the intersectionality of the issues and how we can look at them through that lens.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, so maybe one more question. Are you guys up for one more question? Okay. Last question. It is, and maybe this might be a Glenn and Nikki. Just so let me read it and then you guys let me know, but giving you a heads up. It is noble that Horizon Foundation is focusing on social determinants of health and mental health. These are root causes to inequity, health, wellness, and economic stability. Have you considered including programming that also includes addressing loneliness and isolation that many adults experience and is a known risk to poor health? Additionally, aging well / aging strong is a key area of wellness often overlooked.
You want me to take that one, Nikki? All right. So yeah, we are considering all these things. We've had a pretty robust mental health portion of our portfolio for the past 7 or 8 years. And we want to continue to evolve that with all the partners that are out there wanting to work on these issues. So if you are interested, I think as Kenitra said, come to one of our issue area open houses so that we can talk more deeply and continue that process of figuring out how we do this work together. I think that that's the biggest commitment, or one of the biggest commitments that we're talking about doing, is that the work together that we are anticipating is work together. So we really want to be able to talk to you and work out things together so that we have the best impact in the community. And we know that when we do that, we're going to see a lot of great victories. So the answer is yes, we have thought of that. I think to understand how we get to the details, let's continue talking.
Thank you. Okay, I know I said one more, I said the last question, but maybe just one more. Nikki, I think it would be great if you could address this. Will any of the wealth building strategies look at reparations and or reconciliation for descendants of American slavery?
So I think that's a great question. I had a little bit of a coughing fit during the slide on wealth attainment, so I didn't get to all the examples that I wanted to. But I would say this area is one that we are really interested in being creative and thoughtful and responsive in. We recognize that, again, the wealth difference between communities of color and white communities is fourfold difference, if not more. And there have been a lot of policy solutions that people have suggested to us in this sort of spirit of creativity. One that came up recently was the idea of baby bonds. Baby bonds are essentially where a state or a locality could set up an endowed fund, essentially for any child under a certain income threshold here in Howard County or in the state of Maryland. That endowed fund could grow over time. And at age 18 could be used to start a business, go to school, and again, sort of build wealth in communities in different ways. So we are very open to the conversation in the community about what is the best way to build wealth and what is the best way to look forward and to look backward at the harm that we have done in our country. And so please come talk to us about your ideas and about the coalitions that you have that would like to work on these areas.
Thanks, Nikki. You guys are you're all gonna think I'm completely lying. Okay, last one, I promise. Okay. I do not see public transportation listed. However, it has an impact on housing, jobs, healthcare, etc. Can you share if Horizon Foundation will address public transportation in Howard County? Glenn, could you take this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna fake frozen the screen. No. So I think it's a wonderful question. Let me just tell you that when we were doing the data analysis within the Planning Evaluation Committee, we had so many great discussions about what it is that we could do as a foundation. And we have a framework for how we make decisions on things that we can work on that takes into account everything from the need, public need for it, and you're 100% right, there's a need for transportation, but also looks at opportunity and niche. So opportunity, do we have the ability to move the thing forward that we're talking about, or do we have the partners in place? And secondly, is this a place that makes sense for us to be given the capacity of all of our staff and all the rest? We wanted to be able to get to everything. In fact, the Plan Evaluation Committee said, we'd love to do it all. But the reality is we can't, as an organization, do it all at one time. We wanted to make sure that we could be successful at doing the things that we promised. We already had broader partners that we knew of in these other areas. That's what we decided to start with. So as far as transportation goes, we want to convene and connect you to the right people who are working on transportation in the community, and there are some, and know that it is something that we have heard loud and clear that hopefully we'll be able to get to in the future. But for now, we are sticking with what we have that we talked about tonight.
Thanks, Glenn. Okay, so I'll start to wrap us up. I'm not gonna say it's the last question and then not be, because it's late, and thank you all so much for joining us again. I'm sorry that we didn't get a chance to get to everybody's question. However, if you have more questions, I will put in the chat. Please share them with us, send them to info@thehorizonfoundation.org. We want to make sure that we're thoroughly answering your questions, addressing concerns as we move forward, because like I said, we want to continue to co-create. We want to continue to have these conversations and work together to find solutions and all those great things all those things to really make Howard County a great place to live and for people to live abundant and healthy lives. So that's it for us. A big thank you from the Horizon Foundation staff, Board of Trustees. We really appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a really, really great day.